Chapter 350. Above the cave, Ghost King Valley, Treasure Instrument Sect, and the Hu sisters all wore anxious and worried expressions as they waited silently. Half a month had passed since Xianxia had entered retreat, but even now he had yet to appear. On the contrary, the several dozen meters around the cave where he had secluded himself was now completely covered in thick ice. Why hasn't Brother Yang come out yet? Could there have been some kind of accident? Cheng Ying paced back and forth, his big mouth unable to remain silent. As soon as his words fell, he noticed 3 cold gazes directed towards him, causing him to shrink his head back and chuckle awkwardly. Chen Yi helplessly smiled. Unfortunately, none of us have reached the immortal ascension boundary. If someone had cultivated their divine sense, we could have investigated the situation. Tao Yang shook his head. No, even if we had our divine sense, we wouldn't be able to investigate. I'm afraid this ice can even freeze our divine sense. Listening to him say this, everyone was shocked. All of them became more and more worried. After a long time, a cracking sound was suddenly emitted from the ice layer that covered a radius of 100 feet. Immediately, the mysterious ice, which seemed to have never melted for tens of thousands of years, burst apart like flour. A figure shot out from the crystal powder that permeated the sky and flew over. Everyone's expression brightened as they quickly greeted him. You finally came out. If you hadn't come out, I'm afraid we would have had to fight our way in to see what was going on. Chen Yi saw Xianxia land and immediately laughed. Xianxia simply smiled back. Glancing around at the crowd, he nodded, I've made you worry. Since we've come out, let's leave this place first. The evil cavern is currently not peaceful. Leng Shan said somewhat anxiously. Tao Yang also nodded slightly. The evil cavern had released such a strong energy fluctuation, and even 2 of the Ghost King's demons had died inside. News of the appearance of the demon spirit had also spread. While Xianxia had been in retreat, many immortal ascension boundary masters had rushed inside to investigate the situation. If they stayed here any longer, they would definitely be in trouble. About 30 kilometers away from the evil cavern, the group of people stopped. Chen Yi curiously asked, Brother Yang, I saw that the Ghost King's demons had suffered heavy casualties, so how come you're safe and sound? Looking at your expression, it seems you've gained a lot. Hearing his question, everyone cast their gazes over. They were also quite curious about this matter. Xianxia smiled and nodded, just a small harvest. Those 4 old fogies fought with the thing that came out of the evil spirit's spring water. Both sides suffered heavy losses, and I was able to take advantage of it. I was just lucky. This. Chen Yi was stunned. He smiled bitterly and said, It is indeed the Tao of good luck. There is actually such a good thing in the world. Tao Yang chuckled and said, Looks like Qi Mei and Wang Liang has given you an opportunity by capturing you. Those few old fellows have really tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Ha! Why didn't I run into him? Cheng Ying muttered. Envy was written all over his face. Leng Shan sneered, Unless it's Xianxia, all of us here will die. Do you think it's easy to take advantage of others? Cheng Ying laughed awkwardly. I was just saying. How could everyone not know that taking advantage of Qi Mei and Wang Liang was more difficult than ascending to the heavens? Although Xianxia didn't explain in detail, there were definitely some unknown dangers involved. Only he could survive a battle with Qi Mei and Wang Liang. During this time together, all of them had witnessed Xianxia's strength countless times and knew that they couldn't treat him like an ordinary Yuan Qi cultivator. No matter what. Chen Yi's expression became serious as he patted Xianxia's shoulder affectionately. This time in the evil cavern, my Ghost King Valley owes you many lives. In the future, if Brother Yang needs anything, just say the word. I can't guarantee anything else, but all of us here will do our best to help, even if we have to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire, even if we have to die 10,000 deaths. All the Ghost King Valley disciples nodded. Tao Yang smiled. Us brothers and sisters are the same. Although we may not be good at fighting when it comes to refining artifacts, if Brother Yang wants to refine some kind of artifact in the future, just come to my treasure instrument sect and find me. Good. Yang Kai nodded. This place isn't far from Ghost King Valley, Brother Yang. If it's convenient, why don't you come to my sect and play for a few days? Chen Yi enthusiastically invited. He shouldn't go, Leng Shan said indifferently. Junior sister, you're being too unreasonable. Chen Yi's face suddenly became bitter. He wanted to communicate more with Yang Kai, but he hadn't expected Leng Shan to not give him any face. I'm doing this for his own good, what do you know? Leng Shan glared at him. Honored master knows him. If he goes to Ghost King Valley, I'm afraid he won't live to see tomorrow's sun. Chen Yi was shocked, only now remembering that his honored master Gaili seemed to have a great grievance with High Heaven Pavilion's sect master. Not daring to mention it again, he turned to Tao Yang and asked, "What about you?" Tao Yang smiled and said, "Even if Brother Chen didn't ask, we still wanted to go with you. I'm quite curious about Ghost King Valley's ghost breeding ground. I wonder if we can go and see it." That's exactly what I was looking for. Chen Yi laughed heartily. Then we'll part here, take care of yourselves. Leng Shan looked at Yang Kai and said. Yang Kai smiled and nodded. Let's go, Brother Yang, two young ladies, farewell. Chen Yi called out to everyone, cupping his fists towards Yang Kai and the Hu sisters. Take care. Yang Kai returned the gesture, watching the Ghost King Valley and Treasure Instrument sect people leave together. So the people from the heretical schools aren't that bad after all. When there were only 3 people left. When the 3 of them were alone, Hu Mei Er suddenly said, "Those people from Ghost King Valley are all very good." Hu Jiao Er nodded and said earnestly, "Good and bad are only relative." Yang Kai stared at her with a dumbfounded smile. Hu Jiao Er blushed and glared at him. Smelly brat. I haven't settled accounts with you yet. What accounts? Yang Kai looked confused. Glaring at him hatefully, Hu Jiao Er didn't have the nerve to bring up the previous matter, shaking her head and saying, "Nothing. Where do you want to go now?" Yang Kai couldn't help feeling a bit confused, thinking for a while, but he didn't know where to go. Looking at his empty and confused eyes, Hu Mei Er couldn't help but wonder. For some reason, the Hu sisters' hearts ached. The powerful and strange man in front of them was no longer as confident and spirited as he had been in the evil cavern. He was like a child who had lost his way, not knowing where to go, not knowing where to go home. Affected by his confusion, Hu Jiao Er and Hu Mei Er couldn't help feeling sad. Let's leave the ash-gray cloud evil land first. Hu Jiao Er quickly changed the subject, really couldn't bear to see him lose his soul. Good. Yang Kai's eyes quickly regained their clarity and firmness. Although he didn't know where to go, the only thing he was certain of was that he had to constantly become stronger. The goal of the martial Tao had always been so clear, he would not be affected by anything. After a pause, asking, "Where do you want to go? Back to Blood Battle Gang?" Hu Jiao Er smiled bitterly. "We can't go back until this war is over. Otherwise, we'll become a target of gossip." Their Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall were implicated because of High Heaven Pavilion and were forced to participate in this war by those great forces. If they went back at this time, it would only bring trouble to Blood Battle Gang. Then let's go find the others in the gang. Hu Mei Er proposed. This time there are 50 people from the gang, they should still be fighting in that area. What do you think? Hu Jiao Er looked at Yang Kai. I'll follow you. Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders. He also wanted to find a place with a lot of people to inquire about the situation of High Heaven Pavilion, especially the whereabouts of Ling Tai Su and Su Yen. Looking at the Hu sisters, he suddenly smiled. But before that, you'll have to disguise yourselves. What do you mean? Hu Jiao Er frowned. How did you end up being targeted by free and unfettered sect? Haven't you learned your lesson yet? Hu Jiao Er suddenly woke up and coldly said, "It's not our fault that we're beautiful. If it weren't for the fact that there are so many lechers like you in this world, how could we be so troubled? We didn't provoke anyone, but wherever we go, there will be people thinking about us. It's so annoying." Although they said so, Hu Jiao Er and Hu Mei Er had no choice but to listen to Yang Kai's advice. After all, this was the ash-gray cloud evil land. Lechers were more unscrupulous than outside. After dressing up, the 2 women's stunning faces were finally covered up. They didn't have the right tools on hand, so they couldn't do a good job, but at least they wouldn't attract unwanted attention. The older sister's face was now covered in dust and her hair was a mess, making her look extremely sloppy, while the younger sister's face was full of pockmarks, making her look completely unappetizing. After dressing up, the two sisters glanced at each other and couldn't bear it any longer. Although her face was slightly covered up, her enchanting and exquisite figure could not be hidden no matter what. The three of them traveled together, cautiously avoiding contact with others in the ash-gray cloud evil land. Xianxia's spiritual energy played a huge role at this moment. Releasing his divine sense, the situation within a 30-kilometer radius was clear at a glance, allowing him to always be able to predict the enemy's movements and take the Hu sisters into hiding before any danger arrived. Without him, the Hu sisters wouldn't have been able to escape from the ash-gray cloud evil land. A month later, the travel-worn trio crossed a few thousand kilometers and finally left the ash-gray cloud evil land. After a month of hiding and fighting, whether it was Xianxia or the Hu sisters, both of them were physically and mentally exhausted. Fortunately, along the way, there were only scares but no real dangers. The most dangerous encounter was when they encountered an immortal ascension boundary 4th stage master who was caught off guard by Xianxia's soul skill and was forced to flee. In that battle, Xianxia was also seriously injured, but under the careful care of the two sisters and the effect of the myriad drug liquid, it only took him 2 to 3 days to fully recover. During this month, the Hu sisters gradually became dependent on Xianxia and trusted him even more. No matter what Xianxia said, they wouldn't refute him. Even the aggressive Hu Jiao no longer dared to treat Xianxia as the little brat from 2 years ago. Many times she and her sister had witnessed Xianxia's magical abilities, enough to change their perception of Xianxia. If not for his protection, Hu Jiao didn't know what she and her sister would be like now. Chapter 351. Taifang Mountain was a mountain ridge that stretched from north to south. In this vast land, it wasn't too big, but it wasn't too small either. Originally, this mountain ridge could be considered a beautiful place. The trees on the mountain swayed in the wind, verdant and lush, and the birds chirped and the flowers were fragrant. But at this moment, this entire mountain range had become a battlefield. The south side of the mountain was where the ash-gray cloud evil land's forces gathered, while the north side was where the forces surrounding the ash-gray cloud evil land gathered. The two forces looked at each other from across the mountain range, using the entire mountain ridge as a battlefield. Over the past few months, Taifang Mountain had been severely damaged, and there were traces of blood and corpses everywhere. It was unknown how many cultivator had fallen here. This kind of confrontation between the two sides was not uncommon in other places. Taifang Mountain was just a small part of the entire front line. Since leaving the ash-gray cloud evil land, the Hu sisters had rushed here because their blood battle gang members had been sent here to fight. It was here that they had been chased down by a master and unable to return, forcing them to take refuge in the ash-gray cloud evil land. Along the way, Xianxia had also learned a lot of useful information from them. The battle at the Taifang Mountain wasn't that important, so there weren't many experts gathered here. In addition to the blood group, there were also people from the Storm House, as well as several elites from other second-class forces. All of them were under the command of a first-class family. Xiang family was the surname of this family. Because the people here had come from all over the world, most of them were from second- or third-class forces, so the Xiang family had absolute leadership. Even if some people disagreed, they had no choice but to obey the orders of the Xiang family. After all, the Xiang family's heritage was truly rich. At the foot of Taifang Mountain was a place that was easy to defend but difficult to attack. There were many simple residences built here, and this was where the cultivator encircling the ash-gray cloud evil land rested. On this day, a man and 2 women had just arrived from outside, looking travel-worn. Before the 3 of them had even approached, they were stopped by a few people in bright clothes who asked them about their identities. These people saw that Xianxia and the Hu sisters weren't very strong, so they didn't take them seriously. Therefore, he did not take them to heart. Stopping them for questioning was just a matter of routine. However, those few pairs of eyes were constantly looking at the beautiful figures of the Hu sisters. But when they saw their honor, they immediately lost their appetite, and their eyes revealed disgust. Yang Kai looked indifferent. He didn't say a word. On the other hand, Hu Jiao Er and Hu Mei Er hurriedly wiped off the disguise on their faces, revealing their original appearances. After wiping her face, although it was still dark, she finally had the grace of a beauty. The few people who were blocking the way stared blankly for a moment before suddenly asking, "Are you the young ladies of the blood group's Hu clan?" Hu Jiao Er replied indifferently. "So it's you." The leader of the group revealed a joyful expression and said excitedly, "It's great that the two ladies are fine. Please come in." As he spoke, he stepped aside and said humbly, "We are just doing our job. Please don't take it to heart." Hu Jiao Er furrowed her brows. With a lukewarm expression, he was about to pass through with his sister and Yang Kai. The group of people looked at Yang Kai suspiciously, and the leader of the group asked cautiously, "Dare I ask these two young ladies, this is my friend?" "Oh, since he is the young lady's friend, then it's fine," the leader said with a smile. He didn't question them and let them pass. When the three people entered and disappeared, the leader said with a dignified expression, "Go and tell the young master that the Hu sisters have returned safely. Go quickly." One of the people immediately flew out. Yang Kai followed behind the Hu sisters, shuttling through the area and soon arrived at the depths. "Over there." Hu Mei Er suddenly shouted in surprise and pointed in a direction. Looking in the direction she pointed, Yang Kai saw a group of people gathered there, but he didn't know what they were talking about. "It's Uncle Lu." Hu Jiao Er also smiled and hurriedly walked over. The group of people on the other side sensed that someone was coming and all of them glanced over. The next moment, a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 50s or 60s stood up shakily and stared at the Hu sisters in a daze, his old eyes full of joy. Guan Qi Lu was an immortal Ascension Boundary 4th Stage Master and a master of Blood Battle Gang. During the battle with Meng Wuya, he had participated in it. However, unlike Long Zai Tian, Guan Qi Lu was extremely loyal to the Blood Battle Gang, as well as a member of the Hu family. He had watched the Hu sisters grow up, so in the Blood Battle Gang, his relationship with the Hu sisters was quite good. "Is it the two young ladies?" Guan Qi Lu asked hesitantly. "This, Uncle." Hu Jiao Er smiled. "You really came back safe and sound." Guan Qi Li's old eyes suddenly burst into tears. The group of people around him also looked at the Hu sisters in pleasant surprise. The two sisters had disappeared for 2 to 3 months, and the last time anyone saw them was when they were being chased on Tai Fong Mountain. Everyone thought that it would be impossible for them to escape, but who would have thought that after 2 months, they would return to this place in perfect condition? Since the people here had gathered together, they must have a good relationship with each other. Seeing the Hu sisters return, of course they would be happy. There weren't many people in this group, only a dozen or so, but when Yang Kai swept his eyes over them, he recognized all of them. They were either from Blood Battle Gang or from Storm Hall. What's more, Yang Kai even saw Fang Ziki among them. This extremely patriarchal guy had actually been dragged here to fight. The disciples of the two sects came from the same place and had been forced to participate in this war, so it wasn't surprising that they would gather together. "It's good that you're back," Sect Master can rest assured. Guan Qi Lu quickly adjusted his expression and nodded with relief, but after his eyes fell on Yang Kai, he couldn't help but frown and ask suspiciously, "Where have I seen this little brother before?" The Hu sisters suddenly didn't know how to explain. If it was just this group of people who knew Yang Kai's identity, it wouldn't be a big deal, but the key point was that there were other cultivator forces nearby. If they were to learn that Yang Kai was from High Heaven Pavilion, things wouldn't end well for them. Fang Ziki gave Yang Kai a meaningful look before quickly stepping forward and lightly coughing, wearing a strange smile, cupping his fists and saying, "Storm Hall's Fang Ziki, this friend looks very much like an old friend of mine. May I ask this friend's name?" "Yang Kai." Yang Kai laughed in his heart, but his face remained serious. "So it's Brother Yang, nice to meet you. Not only does this friend look like an old friend of mine, but his name is also very similar." "Haha, don't you think so?" Fang Ziki patted the shoulder of the junior brother next to him. The junior brother nodded helplessly. Is there a need to be so secretive? The others also instantly understood the meaning of Feng Ziqi's words, each of them wearing strange expressions. Guan Qilu was an old and experienced man, so after hearing Yang Kai's name, he suddenly realized why this young man looked so familiar. It was him. The group of people had a tacit understanding, but none of them pointed it out. The scene was joyous and harmonious, but Yang Kai was keenly aware that under the smiles and comforts of this immortal ascension boundary master from Blood Battle Gang, there was a trace of worry and anxiety. Just as they were talking, Feng Ziqi's expression suddenly became cold, his eyes flashing, his mouth curling into a casual grin as he said, "Xiang Chu is here." As he spoke, he stared at the Hu sisters with a burning gaze. The group of people suddenly fell silent. Guan Qili's face sank, his expression suddenly becoming unpleasant. Looking back, Yang Kai saw that not far away, a handsome young man in bright robes was accompanied by two immortal ascension boundary masters. This young man strode towards them. His clothes were neat and tidy, and on his face was a refreshing smile. On top of that, his appearance was quite good. One could say he was handsome and elegant. Looking at his appearance, he was probably only 26 or 27 years old. Xiang Chu, the Xiang family's young lord. The Xiang family was a first-class family, so Xiang Chu's identity and status were naturally not low. Just like Bai Yunfeng and Dong Qinghan, they were both leaders of the younger generation. During this past month, Yang Kai had also heard Xiang Chu's name from the Hu sisters several times, but every time he was mentioned, the two sisters would quickly change the subject, not wanting to say too much. Now that he saw him in person and the look in his eyes, Yang Kai finally understood why the Hu sisters didn't like to talk about him. Not only the Hu sisters, but everyone from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall also didn't seem to have a good impression of this young man. Only Xiang Chu still wore a gentle smile as he strode over. Standing in front of them, his eyes flashed a gratified light as he called out softly, "Jiao, you've come a long way, you must have worked hard." Guan Qili's old eyes narrowed, immediately causing the two immortal ascension boundary masters behind Xiang Chu to stare at him. Hu Jiao's brow furrowed as she calmly said, "Young Lord Xiang, Jiao, and Mei are not names you can call. Do you need me to remind you again?" Xiang Chu's expression froze for a moment before he seemed to remember something, letting out a dry laugh and cupping his fists. "Two young ladies, please forgive me." Reuniting after such a long time, this one was a bit emotional and spoke without thinking. "I hope there won't be a next time." Hu Jiao snorted. Sure, I promise there won't be a next time." Xiang Chu nodded repeatedly before letting out a long sigh, his brow furrowed as he said, "But this one must first apologize to the two young ladies." Hu Jiao's brow furrowed slightly as she stared at him faintly. Xiang Chu smiled wryly. "During that battle, the two young ladies fell into deep trouble. This one should have gone to rescue you, but unfortunately, my skills were lacking and my strength was too low, so I could only watch as the two young ladies were chased and captured. The two young ladies were gone for 2 to 3 months. Every time this one thought about it, it felt as if a knife had been twisted in his heart, making him unable to sleep at night. I wished I could sprout a pair of wings and fly to your side to ensure your safety." Suddenly, Xiang Chu smiled brilliantly. "Fortunately, the two young ladies have returned today, this one can rest assured." His smile was extremely sincere, as if the clouds had parted to reveal the light of the moon. However, the Hu sisters remained indifferent. Xiang Chu didn't seem to care, cupping his fists and saying, "Two young ladies have just returned from such a long journey, you must be tired. You should rest early and we'll talk some other time. If the two young ladies have any needs, please don't hesitate to tell this one. As long as it is within this one's ability, this one will definitely help." Finished speaking, Xiang Chu smiled and left. Chapter 352. Looking at Xiang Chu's back, Yang Kai was stunned for a moment. Originally, when he saw that this group of people didn't like him, Kai Yang thought that this person was some kind of playboy. The Xiang family was a first-class family, so it was normal for a young lord from such a big family to be somewhat domineering. But now, seeing him behaving appropriately and generously, Yang Kai couldn't help marveling at his gentlemanly temperament and his free and easy demeanor. Yang Kai could clearly see this young man's love for the Hu sisters, and he had no intention of concealing it. However, even though Hu Jiao treated him so coldly, he didn't show any annoyance, nor did he continue to harass her. He could be considered a true man. Yang Kai didn't know why the Hu sisters and everyone else here didn't like him very much. However, there was always a cause for everything. Yang Kai also knew that people's hearts were unpredictable, so he intuitively felt that this Xianxia must have a side to him that others didn't know. After Xianxia's back disappeared, Feng Ziji leaned over to Yang Kai and chuckled, "Yang Kai, don't be fooled by that guy. He may look kind, but in fact his mouth is filled with honey and his heart is filled with swords. He is a shrewd schemer, otherwise he wouldn't have been the one to command this place." "I know." Yang Kai nodded lightly. He didn't mean to underestimate Xianxia. Bai Yunfeng, for example, was domineering and arrogant, treating people with kindness and evil written all over his face. He didn't have the slightest bit of scheming, so he wouldn't pose any threat to Yang Kai. Instead, it was people like Xianxia who needed to be wary. "He's in charge of this place?" Hu Jiao, on the other hand, heard something unusual and looked at Feng Ziji in surprise. "What's going on? He's just a member of the younger generation. How can he be in charge of this place? Isn't there an elder of the Xiang family in charge?" Feng Ziji was stunned for a moment before letting out a hollow laugh and turning his eyes to Guanqi Lu. "The two young ladies must be tired from the long journey. You should rest first. I'll tell you later tonight." Guanqi Lu hesitated for a moment before saying, "All right." Hu Jiao didn't press him. First of all, she had already noticed that something was not quite right. Second of all, she and her sister really did need to clean themselves up. After all, she had been hiding with Yang Kai for a whole month. She couldn't bear the filth on her body anymore. Women always preferred cleanliness. "Yang Kai, come with me." Feng Ziji greeted him warmly. Smiling faintly, Kai Yang followed him. At night, a bonfire was lit outside. The people from Blood Group and Storm House were all gathered here. The bonfire flickered as Yang Kai and Feng Ziji roasted the game over the fire. Crackling sounds of explosions could be heard, followed by complete silence. After a long time, Hu Jiao asked, "Uncle Lo, what's going on here?" The number of experts had suddenly decreased by a lot. "Where are the high-level members of my Blood Group and Storm House?" Before they left 2 or 3 months ago, there were still many immortal ascension boundary masters here, but now that they had returned, there were less than 10 of them. However, Yang Kai soon discovered that there were less than 10 people left. Besides the 2 who were guarding Xianxia, the rest of the immortal ascension boundary cultivators weren't very strong. Although this location wasn't very important on the entire front line, it was still a small matter. But with so few masters here, it was simply too trivial. If the people on the other side of the mountain attacked, everyone here would likely be wiped out. Guanqi Lu sighed and said faintly, "It's like this. A month ago, we received an order from the central capital's 8 great families to mobilize all the masters who participated in the encirclement of the ash-gray cloud evil land. It seems that the 8 great families and the demon lord are preparing for a final battle." "A final battle?" Hu Jiao exclaimed. Guanqi Lu nodded slightly. "After all, this isn't a military battle. We're all just people who want to settle our grudges. After fighting for so long, everyone wants to end it quickly. It's probably because the 2 sides have reached some kind of consensus that most of the masters here have been transferred away, including your father." "Father also went?" Hu Mei murmured. Although Hu Man was an immortal ascension boundary 8th stage master and was one of the strongest masters in the world, when compared to the rest of the world, he was nothing. Being pulled away to participate in the final battle, the slightest carelessness could result in his death. How could the Hu sisters not be worried? Our storm hall is also the same. Our master and elders have all left, and most of the masters on the other side of the mountain have also left. Feng Ziji smiled bitterly. His master was the storm hall's sect master, Shao Ruahan. If it weren't for sect master's request, this old master wouldn't have been able to stay. Guanqi Li's expression suddenly became gloomy. Sect Master said that the two young ladies would definitely come back to find him one day, so he asked me to stay. First, to take care of these young people, and second, to wait for the two young ladies to return. Now it seems that Sect Master's decision was extremely wise. Speaking of this, Fang Ziki became extremely resentful and bitterly said, "If it weren't for Senior Guan's repeated protection, your blood battle gang and my storm hall would have already died." What happened? Hu Jiao Air's face sank. "It's just like that," Fang Ziki sneered. "Because our two sects are next to High Heaven Pavilion, everyone here doesn't like us very much. When the two of you were here, Xiang Chu still had to show off in front of you to gain more points, but when you disappeared, Xiang Chu simply no longer paid attention to you. Whenever there was any danger, our two sects' disciples would always be the ones to face it." With a cold expression, Fang Ziki said, "When we came here, there were more than 100 people, but now? There are only a dozen left." Having witnessed the tragic deaths of so many of his junior brothers and sisters, the pain in Fang Ziki's heart could be imagined. After a pause, Fang Ziki suddenly remembered something and looked at Yang Kai awkwardly. "Don't mind me, I didn't mean anything else." "I know." Yang Kai nodded lightly. Although Fang Ziki said this because he didn't want him to misunderstand, Yang Kai also knew that because of his relationship with High Heaven Pavilion, Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall were now in deep water. In this regard, it was indeed High Heaven Pavilion that had implicated their two sects. However, it was also those outside forces that were looking for trouble. Just because the Demon Lord was from a sect, High Heaven Pavilion was burned down, and even Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall couldn't escape. This was a bit too unreasonable. After listening to Guan Qili's explanation, Hu Jiao Air thoughtfully said, "If that's the case, then the battle here is even less important, right?" Guan Qilu nodded slightly. "Indeed. At the earliest, 3 to 5 days, and at the latest, half a month, the decisive battle will begin. The battle on the other side will determine the outcome of the battle. Therefore, whether it is us or the forces on the other side of the mountain, we don't care much about each other. All we need to do now is wait for the result, and we probably won't fight with the other side." "Oh." Hu Jiao Air nodded slightly. "So that's why the Xiang family is relieved to hand over the power here to Xiang Chu." Fang Ziki chuckled. They probably want to take advantage of this rare opportunity to temper him. Such an opportunity was rare. There were at least 5 or 6 forces gathered here, and with so many people gathered together, there was bound to be disputes. If Xiang Chu could handle the matters here, then he would definitely be able to handle the matters of the Xiang family and become the Xiang family's patriarch in the future. The Xiang clan was nurturing him as their future successor. After understanding these things, the Hu sisters immediately relaxed, but they were still worried about Hu Man's safety. The roasted game exuded a meaty aroma, and Yang Kai chewed without any scruples. The Hu sisters also couldn't resist the temptation and ate in a refined manner. This past month of following Yang Kai had been very difficult. As they ate and chatted, the atmosphere became harmonious and cheerful, especially when the remaining people thought that they would soon be able to return to the sect. Fang Ziki somehow managed to get some wine and started drinking with Yang Kai. Yang Kai didn't fear him and started to fight with him on the spot. While they were enjoying themselves, a group of people casually approached them from the darkness. Leading the group was a man and a woman. Both of them didn't look very old. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. This was especially so for that woman. Her figure was enchanting, and her tight clothes outlined her exquisite waist. Her top had no sleeves, and her 2 snow-white jade arms were exposed. Even in the dark of the night, one could clearly see the tender whiteness of her snow-white skin. The 2 people walked towards them with a strange smile on their face, followed by many people. When they were about 10 feet away, the man suddenly staggered and almost fell to the ground. Along with his movement, a large amount of sand flew out, covering the faces of the people from Blood Group and Stormhouse. "Ouch!" The man cried out in an exaggerated manner, as if he was in a hurry to stabilize his pace. The people from Blood Group and Stormhouse were laughing and eating, but who would have thought that such an unforeseen event would occur? Realizing that something was wrong, Guan Qi casually waved his hand, but was unable to block all the sand. Surprisingly, there was some true essence hidden in the sand. Poo poo poo. Everyone was hit by the sand, many of them felt a burning pain on their faces, even the wine and barbecued meat on the bonfire became dirty. Suddenly, most of the people from Blood Group and Storm House stood up, looking at the newcomer with unkind eyes. The man pretended to twist his waist, and with a frightened expression, he said, "I almost fell." The woman giggled and said, "Brother Xierong, how could you be so careless?" Xierong said, "Junior sister Li Fu doesn't know, but brother was watching the monkey play, and was careless and distracted." Li Fu covered her mouth and chuckled, looking around with an innocent face. She said, "Brother really knows how to joke, this late at night. Where did this monkey come from? How come junior sister didn't see it?" Xie Rong laughed. "Junior sister, your eyes are not good. This monkey not only knows how to play, but also knows how to eat meat and drink wine. Don't you think it strange?" Li Fu was surprised. "Really, there is such a clever monkey under the heavens. Junior sister really wants to see it? Where is it? Where is it?" As she said this, her beautiful eyes looked towards the bonfire, a trace of contempt and disdain on her charming face. The two people were pointing at the mulberry tree and cursing the locust tree. How could the people from Blood Group and Storm House not understand? Their faces immediately became gloomy. Chapter 353. The people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall had not been doing well these days. Not only were they often assigned to the most dangerous positions in the battle against the Ash-Gray Cloud Evil Land, but even when they rested in this camp, they were often ridiculed. There were 5 or 6 forces gathered here, and with the exception of the Xiang family, which was a first-class family, the others were all second- or third-class sects. These forces, in terms of combat strength and manpower, were almost the same as Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall. Some were even slightly inferior, but they still dared to throw stones at them. When they were in a good mood, they would mock them, but when they were in a bad mood, they would curse them. It was as if the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall owed them something. When Hu Man and Xiao Ruahan were still here, there were still some people who acted as deterrents, but now that they were gone, only the younger generation of disciples remained. Among them, the people from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were the worst. These days, the people from Wind and Rain Road and Blood Battle Gang had been provoked and cursed at more than 2 or 3 times, but because many of their disciples had died, only a dozen or so had survived, they could only endure. Fong Ziki and his group were in the eye of the storm, so naturally they weren't willing to provoke any trouble. Enduring and retreating time and time again made the people from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court think they were easy to bully. Today, seeing them lighting a bonfire, drinking and eating meat, how could they be willing to let go of such an opportunity? In any case, there was no war here, so if they didn't have some fun, how could they pass the long night? The dozen or so people from Storm Hall and Blood Battle Gang didn't affect Xie Rong and Li Fu in the slightest, both of them still wearing calm and disdainful smiles. It was as if they didn't put these people in their eyes at all, but the look in their eyes was also intriguing. "Sit down." Guan Qi Li's old face was gloomy as he rolled his eyes and ordered everyone. The dozen or so younger generation disciples gritted their teeth and clenched their fists, but they had no choice but to swallow their anger and slowly sit down. Although they were young and full of vigor, they also knew that if they really had a conflict with the other side, the ones who would suffer in the end would still be their group. Not to mention whether or not they could win in a real fight. Even if they won, they would be pursued by the Xiang family afterwards. At that time, the situation of the two sects would be even worse. The dozen or so people sat down one by one. Fong Ziki was the last to sit down. The smile on his face was rather sinister, and the flesh on his face was trembling. Even if his heart was filled with unhappiness, he had to endure it. Yang Kai's expression was calm. He shook off a few grains of dust from the barbecued meat on his hand and looked at the newcomer calmly. Some of these people were at the Yuan Qi realm, but many of them were at the separation and reunion realm. Their strength was not very high. However, Yang Kai's sharp senses told him that several strands of divine sense were currently covering the entire area. 2 of them were vigilant and hostile. It should be Xie Rong and Li Fu's elders who were monitoring the situation here to prevent Guanqi Lu from harming them. In addition, there were two other divine senses that were much more powerful. They were the divine senses of the two masters around Xianxia. Noticing this, Yang Kai grinned and laughed silently. In the past, the members of Storm House and Blood Group had endured. Xie Rong and the others would not continue to provoke them, but today they were obviously not willing to give up. After the group of people sat back down, Xie Rong and Li Fu not only didn't leave but instead took 2 steps forward. Li Fu covered her mouth and smiled towards the Hu sisters. Opening her mouth, she asked, "Two little sisters, I trust you have been well since we last met. I heard that the two of you managed to escape from the ash-gray cloud evil land. Elder sister is very curious. The ash-gray cloud evil land is filled with evil demons, and the two of you are so beautiful, attracting so much attention. How did you manage to escape?" Hu Jiao'er's brow furrowed slightly as she stared at Li Fu with some displeasure, asking lightly, "What do you want to say?" Li Fu giggled and said in a tender voice, "Elder sister is very curious about how 2 little sisters came back safely. If it is convenient, can you tell elder sister about it? For example, what kind of people did you meet along the way, what did you encounter, and how many times did you have to sell your bodies to be able to survive in the hands of those demons?" When Hu Jiao'er and Hu Mei-er heard this, their faces suddenly became gloomy. "Sorry, elder sister said the wrong thing," Li Fu chuckled. Although she apologized, her expression did not show the slightest hint of regret. The men behind her were now looking at the Hu sisters with strange gazes. It was as if they were looking at 2 pairs of broken shoes. Their gazes were filled with disdain, as well as unconcealable greed. "I'm also very curious." Xie Rong grinned. "Not only are we curious, everyone here is curious about what kind of method the two of you used to come back alive from that place." Hu Jiao'er's face was gloomy, her chest heaving up and down, but suddenly she smiled and said, "What does this have to do with you?" "Naturally, it has to do with us." Li Fu chuckled. "If the two of you didn't rely on selling your body to escape safely from that place, then you must have colluded with the evil demons there, otherwise why would they let you go? Perhaps you are the eyes of those evil demons here. If you are spies of the ash-gray cloud evil land, then there must be someone monitoring you." "That's right." Xie Rong's expression suddenly became cold, his eyes suddenly turning to Yang Kai, staring at him fiercely. "This friend looks unfamiliar, where did you come from?" Yang Kai, who was eating, couldn't help but furrow his brow when he heard this question. Only then did he realize that this group of people had come for him. The previous provocation was all just a setup. "It's not convenient to say." Shaking his head, Yang Kai said indifferently, "Is it because you don't dare, or is it not convenient to say?" Li Fu also asked with a sneer. Xie Rong calmly stared at the Hu sisters. "He was brought here by the two of you. You should be clear about his origins, right?" "I don't know, we met on the road." Hu Jiao'er shook her head. How could they casually talk about Yang Kai's origin? Storm Hall's Blood Battle Gang had suffered a great disaster just because they were next door to High Heaven Pavilion. If they told them about Yang Kai's master, there was no telling what kind of chaos would ensue. Casually fabricating a background would be even more unreliable, and they would likely be exposed on the spot. "Sure enough, there's a problem," Xie Rong shouted, waving his hand. "Capture them." "Who dares?" Fong Ziki shouted, standing up as a majestic yuan qi erupted from his body. As soon as he moved, the others immediately moved, all of them staring vigilantly at the people from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. The latter naturally wouldn't back down, drawing their weapons and secretly urging their yuan qi. In an instant, the atmosphere was tense. "Heh." Xie Rong grinned. "You dare to shelter someone from the ash-gray cloud evil land? You're all dead." Xie Rong's smile was quite strange, as if his plan had succeeded, but his smile soon faded and he quickly shouted, "Begin!" As soon as his voice fell, the 2 divine senses entrenched in the ground suddenly transformed into sharp attacks filled with killing intent that rushed straight towards Yang Kai's mind. Realizing the situation was bad, Guanqi Li's complexion changed greatly as he shouted, "Be careful!" The 2 silent attacks broke into Yang Kai's mind. But before they could penetrate, they lost their bearings. Yang Kai's expression sank as his eyes became cold. He had thought that this group of people was just trying to provoke him, but now it seemed that was obviously not the case. Following the direction of the two attacking divine senses, a purple light flashed across the night sky. A bone-piercing chill suddenly spread out before disappearing without a trace, causing everyone present to wonder if they had experienced some kind of illusion. Two muffled sounds rang out not far away, and the two immortal ascension boundary masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court both paled, their eyes instantly becoming bloodshot as they nearly fell to the ground. At that moment, both of them were simultaneously attacked by a strange soul skill. This strange soul skill was mixed with a large amount of evil and frigid coldness, almost freezing their knowledge seas. Fortunately, they sensed something was wrong and immediately counterattacked. Otherwise the consequences would have been unimaginable. Quickly recovering, the two of them glanced at each other and saw the horror and panic in each other's eyes. Outside, Yang Kai had already moved. After using his soul skill to counterattack the two immortal ascension boundary masters, Yang Kai's figure flashed like a gust of wind, instantly arriving in front of Xie Rong. Xie Rong's expression hadn't yet disappeared when a big hand grabbed his neck and sent out a wave of hot true yang yuan qi, causing Xie Rong's neck to burn painfully. Just as Xie Rong let out a pitiful cry, a fist smashed into his eyes, instantly causing him to become dizzy and unable to see anything. Li Fu's pretty face paled, never having expected that Yang Kai would actually be able to survive the attack of two immortal ascension boundary masters. Before she had time to react, Yang Kai's other hand also grabbed her slender neck. Both hands simultaneously pushed towards the middle. Xie Rong and Li Fu slammed into each other, and under the tremendous force and speed, both of them felt half of their bodies go numb. The yuan qi they had hurriedly circulated was also forced back by this collision. Both of them were elites from their respective sects, but at this moment, in front of Yang Kai, they were as fragile as two children, unable to resist at all. Prng prng. Both of them were thrown to the ground like meteors, leaving two human-shaped craters in the ground as the sound of bones breaking rang out, followed by a series of pitiful screams. It wasn't until this moment that everyone present finally recovered. Schwa schwa schwa. The disciples of Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court all stared vigilantly at Yang Kai, each of them preparing their own moves. Who dares move? Yang Kai stomped his foot on Li Fu's beautiful face, pressing half of her face into the dirt, this violent and barbaric action causing everyone's eyelids to twitch. In his other hand, yuan qi condensed into a solid yuan qi, like a dagger, and pressed against Xie Rong's chest. Under the darkness of the night, the flickering bonfire illuminated Yang Kai's gloomy face, making him look extremely terrifying. The people from Storm Hall and Blood Battle Gang were all dumbfounded, standing in place, their faces filled with disbelief. Who dares move? Feng Ziki was the first to recover, angrily shouting as he threw a jug of wine onto the bonfire. With a loud crash, under the influence of alcohol, the bonfire was like a fire dragon, soaring several meters into the sky, making the scene even more intense. Chapter 354. As the bonfire flickered and crackled, countless pairs of eyes focused on Yang Kai. Worry, surprise, shock, horror, humiliation, anger, all kinds of emotions were revealed. Among the Thunderlight Sect's people, a young man stepped forward and stared at Yang Kai with an ugly expression. "This friend, if you have something to say, can we talk it out? Can you release her first?" The people from Soaring Rainbow Court also immediately responded, someone shouting, "Release Senior Sister Li Fu." She was a proud daughter of the heavens within her own sect, a figure that was looked up to and admired by countless fellow disciples. At this moment, her face that was like a flower was actually being stepped on by someone with a smelly foot. How could those young people from the Soaring Rainbow Court be able to endure this? This was blasphemy. This was an insult. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes, a cold light flashing across his eyes as he grinned. "What do you say? We didn't do anything to you, friend. Don't you think you've gone too far?" The young man from Thunderlight sect replied humbly. Interesting. Yang Kai grinned, tilting his head and looking towards Guanqi Lu. Senior, what do you think? Of all the people present, except for Guanqi Lu, who was an immortal ascension boundary master, none of them had reached the immortal ascension boundary, so naturally they weren't aware of the danger just now. The two soul skill attacks from the Thunderlight sect and Soaring Rainbow Court's masters had been silent. If it weren't for Yang Kai having cultivated his divine sense and also having a defensive soul skill, he would likely have died by now. In the eyes of others, just because Xie Rong had shouted, Yang Kai had taken the initiative to attack, and his approach was quite barbaric and overbearing. But the actual situation was only clear to Yang Kai and Guanqi Lu. Guanqi Lu was also slightly stunned, not understanding how Yang Kai was able to remain unscathed. Hearing Yang Kai's question, Guanqi Lu quickly stood up, his expression no longer as casual as before as he stared at Yang Kai with a dignified expression. Narrowing his eyes and pondering for a moment, Guanqi Lu sneered, "This is intolerable." "How what Senior said is right." Yang Kai laughed. The foot that was stepping on Li Fu's face increased in strength. "How dare you treat me like this?" Li Fu screamed. As soon as the words left her mouth, she immediately ate a mouthful of sand. Her pretty face was devoid of color, and her eyes were filled with humiliation and unwillingness. Her strength was not very high, and her aptitude was also not very good. However, in a second-class sect like Soaring Rainbow Court, her status was already considered quite good. Coupled with her beautiful appearance, naturally she could get wind and rain whenever she wanted. She was also quite proud and arrogant. Except for Xianxia, she had never put any other man in her eyes. When had she ever suffered such humiliation? Feeling the sand in her mouth and imagining herself being stepped on, Li Fu almost fainted. "Shut up." Yang Kai glanced at her indifferently. F***CKU? Xie Rong was obviously unwilling to be controlled by others. The moment he opened his mouth, he started cursing. Before he could even utter a single word, he opened his mouth wide and welcomed Yang Kai's fist. With a bang, the second half of Xie Rong's sentence was swallowed back into his stomach. 5 or 6 teeth fell out of his mouth, and in an instant his mouth was full of blood. A look of panic filled his face. He no longer dared to speak. It wasn't until this moment that the two immortal ascension boundary masters from Thunderlight sect and Soaring Rainbow Court rushed over. After the two of them were attacked by Yang Kai's soul skill, they immediately realized that the situation was not good and quickly rushed over, but still failed to arrive in time. Schwa schwa. The two of them appeared 10 meters in front of Yang Kai at the same time, staring at him coldly and vigilantly. Guanqi Lu quietly moved his body, placing himself in the middle of the room. Yang Kai raised his eyes and calmly stared at the two newcomers. The strength of these two wasn't very high, even lower than Guanqi Lu, only immortal ascension boundary second stage masters. After all, the real masters had already been transferred away. The ones who remained were only there to look after the younger generation. There was no need for them to be too strong. The three of them stared at each other, the atmosphere heavy and awkward. After a long time, the two of them glanced over at Xie Rong, whose mouth was covered in blood, and Li Fu, whose face was half buried in the dirt. Their old faces couldn't help blushing slightly. Their juniors being bullied like this was a loss of face for them. What's more, this was a situation where the two of them had launched a sneak attack first, making them seem even more incompetent. "Thank you for your advice," the Immortal Ascension Boundary Master from Thunderlight Sect said. "Same here," Yang Kai replied in a lukewarm manner. The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master from Soaring Rainbow Court coughed dryly and hesitantly said, "Young man, let them go first. It's not good to see them like this." "That's your business. It has nothing to do with me." The man's face sank slightly. "Why do you have to be like this?" The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master from Thunderlight Sect also wore a disgruntled expression, coldly saying, "Young man, for what happened just now, these two old masters will apologize to you. How about you let them go first? You need to know when to leave a line for others in the future." His words were ambiguous, so the others thought he was apologizing because of Xie Rong and Li Fu's rudeness, but Yang Kai knew he was referring to the sneak attack on him. Grinning widely, Yang Kai replied, "There are some things that can't be solved by apologizing." "What do you want?" The Thunderlight sect master's face suddenly sank. Although he knew Yang Kai wasn't simple, there was no need for him to fear him. Right now, because Xie Rong and Li Fu's lives were in the hands of this young man, he had no choice but to lower his pride. For him, this was already his limit. "I don't want to do anything." Yang Kai sneered, the yuan qi in his hand pulsing like a poisonous snake, extremely dangerous. What he wanted to figure out the most right now was why these two people wanted to kill him. He had just returned here with the Hu sisters today, so there was no reason for him to suddenly attract such murderous intent. Directly asking them would definitely not give him an answer, but Yang Kai vaguely felt that this matter was a bit strange. Perhaps it was because someone was competing with him for his affection. "This old master advises you to release them quickly, otherwise you will regret it for the rest of your life." The Thunderlight sect master was too proud to continue arguing with Yang Kai. As he spoke, his yuan qi began to fluctuate, as if it would immediately attack Yang Kai if he didn't release them. "Are you threatening me?" Yang Kai frowned, a trace of hostility appearing on his face. "You can think of it that way." The Thunderlight sect master replied coldly. "What about you?" Yang Kai turned his gaze to the soaring Rainbow Court master, his eyes flashing dangerously. The man simply snorted. He didn't say anything, obviously he had the same intention. "Good." Yang Kai nodded slightly, his expression suddenly becoming ferocious, the yuan qi in his hands instantly pulsing as he attacked Xie Rong and Li Fu's shoulders. Accompanied by two crisp sounds, Xie Rong and Li Fu's faces suddenly paled and then screams came from their mouths. Both of them had their arms broken. The faces of the Thunderlight sect and Soaring Rainbow Court's masters changed greatly as they stared at Yang Kai in horror and disbelief, never having expected him to be so crazy. Guan Qilu also looked at him like he was a madman. His expression was strange. All the young men were the same. Yang Kai's expression was cold as he glanced at the two men, his eyes filled with contempt and disdain. Coldly snorting, he said, "Next time, I will hit them in the chest." "You dare." The Thunderlight sect and Soaring Rainbow Court masters were furious. If they really were hit in the chest, how could Xie Rong and Li Fu survive? "You can try." Yang Kai smiled contemptuously. The two couldn't help feeling slightly stunned. They didn't see the slightest hesitation or fear on Yang Kai's face, nor did they hear any threat or joke in his tone. What he said was the truth. Only now did the two understand that this young man in front of them was not afraid of them at all, otherwise he wouldn't have acted so decisively. Moreover, with his personality, he was someone who could be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force, so the threats of the two had obviously angered him. "Tell us, what will it take for you to give up?" The Soaring Rainbow Court's Immortal Ascension Boundary Master took a deep breath and asked, "You can't give me the answer I want." Yang Kai grinned meaningfully, his eyes shifting slightly as he stared towards a certain spot in the darkness. In that direction, Xianxia couldn't help pinching his nose. His elegant face suddenly showed an interesting grin. "Young master?" The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master behind him couldn't help frowning. "Is he looking at you?" Xianxia nodded gently. "He knows I'm here. How did he know?" "This young man's intuition is too sharp." "Perhaps." Xianxia also had a strange feeling in his heart, but he didn't have a better explanation, so he thought about it for a moment. Smiling freely, he took the lead and walked out. A moment later, he arrived at the scene of the incident and called out to Chu Yang, "What happened? Why did I hear the sound of fighting?" It seemed that the person in charge had appeared, so the tense atmosphere between the two sides suddenly eased a lot. However, the disciples from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall couldn't help feeling worried, while the disciples from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were gloating. They all felt that Yang Kai's blatant attack on Xie Rong and Li Fu would definitely result in him being held accountable and punished. "Young Master Xiang." The three immortal ascension boundary masters present quickly saluted Xianxia. Xianxia just nodded faintly and smiled gently towards the Hu sisters. Xie Rong and Li Fu also scrambled to shout, "Young Master Xiang, help us. This person wants to kill us." Before they could finish their words, Yang Kai swung his hand and sent out 2 slaps. The 2 slaps were loud and harsh in the dark night. Xianxia couldn't help but frown slightly as he stared at Yang Kai from a distance of more than a dozen meters. There was a faint displeasure in his eyes, but he quickly concealed it. "Young Master Xiang, the situation is like this." The Thunderlight sect's master quickly stepped forward and reported what had just happened. Xianxia, on the other hand, raised his hand and swept his eyes over the crowd before finally settling on Hu Mei Er. "Mei Er, tell me what happened?" Hu Mei Er was so concerned about Yang Kai that she didn't care about the way Xianxia called her and immediately explained what had just happened. "Is that so?" After listening to her, Xianxia turned to the people from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court and asked. These people hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to answer, only able to turn their eyes to their respective elders. Xianxia sneered, "What's wrong? This young lord's question is no one going to answer." Everyone quickly lowered their heads and replied in unison, "Yes." Xianxia smiled and said, "Since that's the case, then Xie Rong and Li Fu were in the wrong. Although we are all from different sects, since we are all here, we are all part of the resistance against the ash-gray cloud evil land, so we should help each other. You provoked others first, so it is only natural for this friend to teach you a lesson. You can't blame anyone for being inferior, so why don't you hurry up and apologize to Storm Hall and Blood Battle Gang?" Chapter 355. Apologize? When the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court heard this, they couldn't help but be stunned. The other juniors were also stunned and stared at Xianxia in confusion. Yang Kai's eyes flashed as an inexplicable smile appeared on his face. "Young Master Xiang." Xie Rong had lost several of his teeth, so when he spoke, he couldn't help but shout out in humiliation. He had hoped that Xianxia would stand up for him and uphold justice, but as soon as he saw the fierce look in Xianxia's eyes, he quickly swallowed his words back down. Smiling warmly, Xianxia turned to Yang Kai and cupped his fists. "This friend, this Xianxia has failed in his management, causing Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall to suffer such grievances. Now that you've vented your anger, this Xianxia will act as a mediator. Friends, where possible, let's be lenient. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, but Xianxia can guarantee that something like this will never happen again." While smiling, Xianxia cupped his fists and apologized, his words sincere, expression sincere, and attitude friendly, as if he really was the one who had made a mistake. Xianxia's sudden humility surprised everyone present. The younger generation of Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall suddenly felt proud and elated, their hearts filled with joy. They didn't know that Yang Kai had just encountered a moment ago and only thought that this was just an ordinary fight. Xie Rong and Li Fu, who had always ridiculed them, had now suffered a big loss, and now Xianxia was siding with them. How could they not be satisfied? Only Fang Ziki and the Hu sisters stared at Yang Kai thoughtfully, faintly feeling that something was wrong. Separated by a few dozen meters, Yang Kai stared at Xianxia with a scorching gaze. It wasn't until this moment that he truly understood what it meant to be extremely shrewd. What happened just now had been monitored by the 2 masters behind Xianxia with their divine senses. Xianxia himself had also seen everything clearly from a short distance away, but he still pretended not to know anything and walked over to ask. This person really was a hypocrite with a silver tongue. Is there anything this friend is not satisfied with? If you have any requests, don't hesitate to apologize. Xianxia said with a smile. Young Lord Xiang upholding justice. Naturally I am satisfied. Yang Kai grinned. That's good. That's good. Xianxia said with a relieved expression as he laughed happily. Let's turn big things into small ones. We're all fellow Daoists, so there's no need to keep targeting each other. You should know that our enemy is the ash-gray cloud evil land. Friend, please release these people first. They really are an eyesore. Okay. Yang Kai nodded and threw out his feet. With two bangs, Xie Rong and Li Fu flew back to their respective camps like ragged sacks. Their respective elders caught them and threw them out. He broke a few more of their ribs. Xiangchu's eyes couldn't help narrowing, but Yang Kai simply smiled back at him, not showing any signs of fear. Little brat. Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court's Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters angrily shouted. Apologize. Yang Kai turned his head and looked at them. His eyes were as cold as the cold wind, and his tone was unquestionable. Their faces were filled with anger. Glaring furiously, Yang Kai turned his gaze towards Xiangchu, causing the latter's face to twitch slightly before he nodded. Seeing Xiangchu's gesture, even if the two were unwilling in their hearts, they had no choice but to swallow their pride. In a muffled voice, Xiangchu said, "For what happened just now, I apologize to the Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall brothers. This old master will strictly discipline his disciples and won't allow them to provoke us again." Scram. Yang Kai sneered. Let's go. The Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court masters each carried Xie Rong and Li Fu, leading a group of extremely sullen young disciples away. After they left, Xiangchu turned to the Hu sisters and smiled gently before politely withdrawing. Around the bonfire, after a long silence, the disciples of Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall burst into laughter and stared at Yang Kai in awe, all of them regarding him as a hero. Although the people here belonged to the three great sects, since they had come here, there was no difference between sects. Everyone had worked together and had long since been twisted into a rope. Yang Kai's strong display of strength had caused all of them to feel excited. Only Guanqi Le had a frown on his face, looking somewhat worried. The Hu sisters quietly stepped forward and Hu Jiao Air whispered, "What happened just now?" "It's nothing." Yang Kai shook his head gently. What happened just now, those who knew would have a tacit understanding, there was no need to expose it. Feng Ziki also came up and although he had some doubts in his heart, he didn't ask much and just said, "Shall we continue drinking?" "Come." Yang Kai smiled. Inside Xiangchu's house. The masters of Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court had already settled the injured Xie Rong and Li Fu and arrived. The door opened, and Xiangchu Feng walked in with great haste. He sat down on a chair, and the two guardians behind him stood silently on either side of him. "Greetings, young Master Xiang." The masters of Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court hurriedly saluted, their expressions filled with anger. Xiangchu glanced at them faintly and asked with a chuckle, "Tell me, what happened just now? Why is that little brat still alive and kicking?" The masters of Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court glanced at each other and explained what had just happened. After listening to their explanation, Xiangchu narrowed his eyes and asked, "You mean to say that not only was your soul skill blocked by him, but you were also injured by his soul skill?" The two men's faces turned red as they braced themselves and nodded. The master of Thunderlight Sect quickly added, "I know this reason is a bit far-fetched, but this is the truth. Please understand, young Master Xiang." "I know, I don't doubt you." Xiangchu nodded lightly before suddenly turning to the two masters behind him and asking, "What do you think?" One of them said, "If that's the case, that young man must have a high-grade soul-type artifact on him." The other said, "It's also possible that he has two. One for defense and one for attack, otherwise, with his current realm, it would have been impossible for him to use his soul skill." Xiangchu nodded slightly, "I think so too." Suddenly he smiled brilliantly, "Interesting, he actually has a soul-type artifact on him. That's not something an ordinary person can possess." The eyes of the Thunderlight Sect's master became cold, quietly asking, "Young Master Xiang, do you have the ability?" Xiangchu coldly snorted. "As long as we can entangle Guanqi Le, we have full confidence we can take that little brat's head." "No need, we've already alerted the enemy." Xiangchu slowly shook his head, his expression somewhat unpleasant. "Right, how are Xie Rong and Li Fu's injuries?" Xiangchu asked with concern. The Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court gratefully replied, "That little brat's attack was very heavy. But at least he left them some leeway and didn't take their lives. They should be able to recover after a few days of rest. Xianxia nodded. Then he motioned to the guardians behind him. One of them casually tossed a bottle to the two masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. Xianxia said, "This is a special healing pill from my Xiang family. After you return, give it to them with warm water. They should be able to recover in 10 days or so." "Many thanks, young Lord Xiang." The two masters were overjoyed and repeatedly thanked him. "Go back." Xianxia waved his hand and the two quickly withdrew. "Young master." After the masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court left, one of the old men behind Xianxia hesitated for a moment before asking, "Why were you so polite to that young man? That little brat really isn't simple, but he's not worth you swallowing such humiliation." Xianxia smiled lightly and slowly got up. "The first time I saw him, I knew he was very strong. Didn't you notice that he was completely fearless today? Even when the two of you appeared, his momentum was still fierce. With such an indifferent expression, that little brat is obviously not an ordinary person. I can't see through him, so for the time being, I don't want to make a move on him." Chapter 356. Tai Fong Mountain, atop a ridge. More than 100 cultivator were scattered around, vigilantly and carefully lying in ambush. According to Xianxia, the spies on the other side of Tai Fong Mountain had sent back accurate information that a group of ash-gray cloud evil land cultivator would arrive today to launch a final sneak attack. Therefore, he had ordered his people to lie in ambush here and prepare to intercept the enemy forces. Originally, the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall were skeptical about this news. After all, both sides had been at peace for so long, so why would the ash-gray cloud evil land suddenly attack at the last moment? However, as time passed, and a group of cultivators really sneaked in, their doubts were dispelled. There weren't many people, only about 60 to 70 of them. Among them, the number of immortal ascension boundary masters was quite small. Under Xianxia's effective arrangement and command, the ash-gray cloud evil land invaders were forced to throw away their helmets and flee in panic, suffering heavy casualties. This battle didn't last long, only about half a day's worth of time. When the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall returned victorious and gathered, they found that many cultivator were missing from the crowd. Taking a closer look, they found that the missing people were all from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. Everyone realized that something was wrong. Xianxia. Hu Jiao went straight to the Xiang family's young lord and calmly asked, "Where are Xie Rong and Li Fu?" Xianxia was slightly startled and suspiciously asked, "Didn't they go with you to hunt down the enemy?" Hu Jiao's face went cold. "I haven't seen them since the beginning of the battle." Xianxia's expression also changed, frowning for a moment. Staring at Hu Jiao in horror, he said, "That means we're in trouble. Quickly return." As he spoke, he hastily led a group of people back. Hu Jiao stared at his back and grit her teeth, but there was nothing she could do, so she and her sister could only increase their speed to the limit. They madly retreated. The people from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court suddenly disappeared. Their whereabouts were obvious. It wasn't that Hu Jiao wasn't worried that these two families would find trouble with Yang Kai, but because this time, everyone had participated in this operation. Moreover, the two families' forces were under her nose and she could monitor their movements at any time, so Hu Jiao wasn't too worried. Hu knew that they would disappear after the battle started. By the time he realized it, it was already too late. Now it seems, today's mission was most likely a premeditated trap. Anxious, Hu Jiao and Hu Mei both activated their twin chi shared spirit divine art, and their speed suddenly doubled. Two beautiful figures flew past Xianxia like two meteors. Xianxia's eyes couldn't help narrowing slightly as he stared at the Hu sisters with some surprise, seemingly not having expected them to be so strong. In the camp, Yang Kai sat cross-legged on his bed, circulating his true Yang secret art, as if he was silently waiting for something. He did not have to wait long. After the Hu sisters left, in less than a day and night, the divine sense that was spread out detected an abnormal movement. She opened her eyes, which were shining brightly. A cold smile appeared on her face as she softly muttered to herself, "Have they come?" Ever since he found out that Hu Jiao and the others were going out to carry out a mission, he had been extremely worried. Yang Kai realized that someone had come to deal with him. Among the people here, except for the two masters from the Xiang family, Yang Kai was not afraid of anyone. It was impossible for the two masters from the Xiang family to make a move. They had to follow Xiang Chu at all times to prevent any accidents, so even if Yang Kai understood the current situation, he had no intention of leaving. Asterisk schwa schwa schwa. Asterisk the sound of clothes fluttering could be heard all around. The people who had come had no intention of hiding, so they openly surrounded the place where Yang Kai was. After a while, everything returned to calm, and only a faint murderous intent and hostility could be felt. "Since you've come, there's no need to hide." Yang Kai shouted loudly, standing up and waving his fists in all directions. Fist shadows filled the sky, and the house he was in collapsed with a loud boom. Dust flew everywhere, and smoke filled the air. After the dust had settled, the figures of the people around him entered his eyes. Xie Rong from Thunderlight Sect and Li Fu from Soaring Rainbow Court stared at Yang Kai with eyes filled with deep hatred. That night, both of them had suffered a big loss at Yang Kai's hands and had been severely humiliated. Even now, Xie Rong didn't dare to open his mouth, lest others see his ugly appearance with broken teeth. There were a total of 30 to 40 people from the two factions, and except for the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters he had met that night, the rest were all disciples of the younger generation. A triumphant laugh sounded as Xie Rong shouted, "Little brat, let's see if you die this time." Li Fu also sneered, "I'll make you pay the price, no one has ever treated me like this before." The two of them had been seriously injured, but with the help of the pills given by their elders and Xiang Chu, they had basically fully recovered after half a month. Knowing that this time they could come to Yang Kai without any worries, the two of them naturally couldn't wait to take revenge. "You're not good, too weak." Yang Kai sneered contemptuously, the disdain on his face obvious. Xie Rong and Li Fu both blushed at the same time, unable to help recalling the scene when they were completely powerless against Yang Kai that night, their self-confidence suddenly taking a hit. "Young man, you're too arrogant." The Thunderlight Sect's master coldly snorted and stepped forward, staring at Yang Kai indifferently. "With these two old masters here, do you think you can still get away scot-free today?" Yang Kai chuckled, tilting his head as he looked at these two and asked casually, "All of this was instigated by Xiang Chu, right? Including that night's events." The two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters both sneered but didn't answer. Yang Kai already had a plan in mind, nodding casually. "What benefits did he give you that you want to offend me like this?" The Thunderlight Sect's master sneered, "Who do you think you are? After today, you'll be nothing but a pile of bones, so what if we offend you?" Yang Kai's eyes flashed a cold light as he grinned, "The price of offending me, I'm afraid you won't be able to afford it." As soon as his voice fell, a purple light suddenly rushed out from his mind. "Soul skill. Scatter!" The Soaring Rainbow Court's master roared. At the same time, he released his divine sense in an attempt to intercept Yang Kai's attack. That night, he had suffered a small loss, so he naturally knew the strangeness of this move, so he had used his full strength in this attack. However, this time, his soul skill seemed to be somewhat different from last time. After the purple light rushed to the side, it suddenly exploded. A ripple visible to the naked eye swept out, and all the young disciples who were swept by it painfully clutched their heads. Miserable howls rang out one after another. The two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters' eyes bulged. Not having expected Yang Kai's soul skill to have such a change, they were caught off guard. They simply couldn't stop it. While he was in a daze, the purple lights rushed out one after another. It was like a calm lake that had a stone thrown into it, causing ripples to appear one after another. In the blink of an eye, 4 or 5 ripples spread out. All the young disciples who were swept by these ripples suddenly went silent, all of their eyes bloodshot, blood flowing from their ears and nostrils as they collapsed to the ground. In an instant, 7 or 8 people died at the same time. These people's strength wasn't high, and they didn't have artifacts to defend against soul skills. How could they withstand such destruction? Junior, you court death. The 2 masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court flew into a rage, simultaneously attacking Yang Kai from left and right. Laughing loudly, Yang Kai once again displayed his soul skill, attacking the 2 masters at the same time. Pushing out his palms, Yang Kai activated his White Tiger and Divine Ox seals as he stepped into the void, his figure flickering as he flew towards the Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court disciples, using the Burning Sun's 3-layer bursts one after another. Like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, the group of young disciples were simply unable to cope with Kai Yang's onslaught. The weaker ones were instantly killed, their chests caved in, while the stronger ones were unable to withstand Kai Yang's one strike. As soon as they came into contact with Kai Yang's attack, they were severely injured and unable to get up. Only Xie Rong and Li Fu, desperately working together, managed to block Yang Kai, but they were still sent flying several dozen meters before falling to the ground, unable to get up for a long time. The 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters had just torn apart the White Tiger and Divine Ox Beast souls when they saw Yang Kai slaughtering their way through the crowd of disciples. In just a short time, another 5 or 6 people had been killed, causing them to bristle with anger as they roared, "Little brat, you dare. Whether I dare or not, I've already done it." Yang Kai grinned, wringing the neck of a Thunderlight Sect disciple with one hand before tossing him aside, his body tumbling 5 or 6 times before coming to a stop, a miserable death. The 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters' hearts were practically dripping blood. Today, the 2 of them had led a team to find trouble with Yang Kai, fully confident that they would be able to capture him easily, but they hadn't expected that after only a few moments of fighting, more than a dozen of their own people would die while the other side would remain unscathed. Hurriedly chasing after Yang Kai, they managed to stop him from continuing his slaughter. "Everyone get away!" The Soaring Rainbow Court Master roared. Hearing this shout, the remaining survivors all fled several dozen meters away with ugly expressions, their eyes trembling as they stared towards the center of the field. Not needing to worry about the casualties of their young disciples, the 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters gradually let loose, attacking from the left and right. Their attacks were fierce, their Yuan Qi dispersed like a fog, enveloping Yang Kai, each of them ruthlessly attacking, not leaving him any room to maneuver. The 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters were also quite sullen. When an Immortal Ascension Boundary Master faced an Yuan Qi Master, their greatest advantage was their soul skills, but in front of Yang Kai, not only did they not dare to use them, they also had to guard against his soul attacks, so the depression in their hearts could be imagined. The battle between the 3 was exceptionally fierce. Although Kai Yang was at an absolute disadvantage, being completely suppressed by the 2 masters, a single true element boundary cultivator being able to withstand the attacks of 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, just this point alone was shocking enough. Xie Rong and Li Fu watched on with pale faces, suddenly realizing that they had been captured by Yang Kai that night not because they had been careless or negligent, but because the other party really did have the ability to do so. Even if they were vigilant now, they would never be able to escape Yang Kai's attacks. What kind of freak is this? How could he be so powerful? Xie Rong's mouth was filled with bitterness, his face filled with disbelief. Li Fu's face was pale and she had completely lost the ability to speak, her beautiful eyes trembling violently as she regretted provoking such a person. His strength and terror had already exceeded Li Fu's imagination. Even her original desire for revenge had been diluted by quite a bit in an instant. Now, Li Fu could only hope that the 2 elders could severely injure or even kill Yang Kai on the spot, otherwise, she would never be able to live in peace. Chapter 357. With a wave of heat rolling around him, Yang Kai's true Yang Yuan Qi had been pushed to the extreme, and he had also displayed his full strength, but he was still unable to fight against two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters at the same time. With a bang, his chest was struck by the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters at the same time. Yang Kai's face paled slightly as he was sent flying backwards, his back slamming into a nearby tree, breaking it in half before he finally landed. Good. Xie Rong was extremely nervous and couldn't help shouting, as if he had contributed to Yang Kai's injury. The masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court flew down and stood a few dozen meters in front of Yang Kai, their expressions gloomy as they stared at him. Although Yang Kai had been injured by them, both of them knew that this kind of injury was nothing to him. The Yuan Qi in this young man's body was incredibly pure and strong, enough to resist and resolve at least 80% of their attacks. But in any case, both of them were satisfied with this result. Two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters joining forces to bully a single Yuan Qi master. If they couldn't win, then they would really lose face. Little brat, show this old master your arrogance. The Thunderlight Sect master shouted with a gloomy expression. The Soaring Rainbow Court master also glared at Yang Kai coldly and shouted, "You killed so many of our two sects disciples, today we'll make you pay this debt in blood." Yang Kai slowly stood up, and although his appearance was a bit miserable and isolated, he still grinned as he reached out and wiped the blood from his mouth, raising his eyes to stare at the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters in front of him, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. Immortal Ascension Boundary. Really extraordinary. Yang Kai's voice was slightly low, but his tone was calm and steady. The two people opposite him frowned slightly. They didn't understand why he still looked so calm and unafraid at this time. With a cold expression, the Thunderlight Sect master said, "Little brat, even though you've killed so many of our two sects disciples. But this old master doesn't want to take your life. If you cripple your own cultivation, we can spare your life." Yang Kai grinned, "If you kill me, Xianxia won't have any bargaining chips to use, right?" The two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters narrowed their eyes at the same time. They were secretly surprised that Yang Kai's perception was so keen. Yang Kai had killed so many of their disciples. If they could decide, how could they spare Yang Kai's life? But Xianxia's order was to cripple Kai Yang. Of course, Yang Kai. Of course, he had a use for Yang's life. Yang Kai, Yang, and Yang Kai of Yang of the Great of Rainbow Court? Yang of Yang's, Yang Kai's sect, and Soaring Rainbow Court's, Yang of Heavens. Soaring Rainbow Court's expert also shouted coldly, "Why aren't you making a move yet?" Good. Yang Kai nodded firmly, his white fangs flashing as he glared at the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. "You're willing to be Xianxia's dogs. You can only blame yourselves for that. Little beast, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." The Thunderlight Sect master roared. "Do you really think two immortal Ascension Boundary Second Stage Masters can eat me?" Yang Kai's expression suddenly became cold as he slowly raised his hand. Accompanied by this action, the Yuan Qi which had been surrounding him suddenly disappeared. The two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters didn't know what he was doing, but they faintly felt that something was wrong. Hurriedly glancing at each other, they didn't want to waste any more time and quickly rushed forward. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed slightly as he gently tapped his forehead with his middle finger and whispered in a dreamy voice. This light voice seemed to contain a kind of magical power, like the clear sound of a drum that rang out between the heavens and earth. "Become the demon race. Kong. The entire world seemed to tremble. The earth trembled and the sky began to spin as an incomparable demonic chi suddenly spread out in all directions. This demonic aura was so pure and tyrannical that wherever it swept, a chill rose from the bottom of everyone's heart. The ruthlessness hidden in everyone's heart seemed to be drawn by this aura, and all kinds of evil surged into their hearts. The wind and clouds changed, and the heavens and earth trembled. At this moment, Yang Kai seemed to have undergone some kind of change. Before the two masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court had even reached him, their faces suddenly changed dramatically as they let out a strange cry and simultaneously flew backwards. *Dang. After retreating a dozen steps, the two immortal ascension boundary masters hurriedly regained their footing and stared at Yang Kai in horror, their expressions extremely dignified. The young man in front of them looked no different from before, almost exactly the same, but his temperament and aura were completely different, and the degree of vitality he exuded was also very different. If the previous Yang Kai had made them feel troubled, then the current Yang Kai made them feel a sense of danger. Fatal danger. Both of them were immortal ascension boundary masters and had keen senses. Although they didn't know how a person could undergo such a big change in an instant, their subconscious kept warning them that if they fought with this young man at this time, they would most likely die. Wild beasts had their own instincts and intuition. There were also masters who were more accurate than wild beasts. As soon as this thought popped up in their minds, both of them were startled. Why would a trivial Yuan Qi 6th-stage cultivator give them such an uneasy feeling? Moreover, this demonic Qi was something that even the 6 great evil kings of the Ash-Gray Cloud Evil Land did not possess. Before the two immortal ascension boundary masters could calm down, a series of crackling sounds rang out. Looking around, they saw that with Yang Kai as the center, a layer of ice Qi visible to the naked eye was rapidly spreading outwards. Wherever this ice Qi passed, the earth was instantly frozen. In just a few breaths of time, the ground within a radius of several dozen meters had been completely frozen. The two immortal ascension boundary masters retreated again and again, their faces filled with panic. This kind of ice Qi was not ordinary, it seemed to be able to freeze even their Yuan Qi, so how could they dare to touch it? The eyes of the younger generation disciples trembled violently as they watched all this happen in horror. The second time he had become the demon race, the feeling was still as wonderful as ever. Yang Kai shook his neck and arms. A series of popping sounds rang out. In addition to his face, Yang Kai's entire body was covered in black lines. These lines were complex and mysterious, showing a mysterious pattern that was invisible to others. Little brat, you really are from the Ash-Gray Cloud Evil Land. Lei Guang's immortal ascension boundary master seemed to have discovered some kind of secret. He shouted in horror and excitement. Whatever you say. Yang Kai was in high spirits as he slowly raised his hand and pointed it towards the two immortal ascension boundary masters. Suddenly he pressed his hand down. Obviously nothing had happened, but when the two immortal ascension boundary masters were pressed down, they felt a mountain-like pressure descend from the sky. Under this pressure, the two immortal ascension boundary masters' strength seemed to be shrouded and their Yuan Qi circulation was no longer as fast as before, their movements also becoming much slower. Asterisk shio shio shio. Asterisk the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. The two immortal ascension boundary masters looked forward and were immediately shocked to the core. They saw Yang Kai shoot out a series of jet black Qi towards them. Those attacks were like serpents of flesh and blood that suddenly opened their ferocious mouths in midair. Shaking their heads and tails, baring their fangs, they moved at an extremely fast speed. Asterisk Kacha. Asterisk wherever these attacks passed, the strong winds brought about by them plowed out one clearly visible gully after another on the ground, causing dirt and debris to fly everywhere. The scene was chaotic. The incomparably ferocious attack contained an ice-cold and sharp energy. It was invincible, and it almost destroyed everything in its path as it attacked the two people in front of it. The two immortal ascension boundary masters were shocked and panicked, their expressions becoming extremely ugly as they desperately tried to dodge. Do you think you can escape? Yang Kai laughed towards the sky. Waving his hands, all the demonic Qi that flew out scattered to the sides and chased after the two immortal ascension boundary masters. Not only that, the white tiger and divine ox seals were also pushed out again. Two jet black beast phantoms appeared, but instead of attacking the two immortal ascension boundary masters, they attacked the scattered young disciples. These two beast phantoms seemed to be much stronger than the previous two. The two beast phantoms leapt forward and almost instantly arrived in front of a stunned soaring Rainbow Court disciple. This young disciple was only a separation and reunion boundary 8th stage cultivator, so before he could recover from his shock, he was directly dismembered by the two beast phantoms, not even having time to scream. "Run, run! If this father can't kill you, then I'll kill all your disciples." Yang Kai shouted ruthlessly. Hearing his shout, the young disciples were suddenly dumbfounded, a chill running down their spines. Despicable! The faces of the masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court changed dramatically as they cursed. Seeing the two beast phantoms rush towards another young disciple, the two immortal ascension boundary masters no longer dared to escape and simultaneously attacked the two beast phantoms, finally saving the young disciple. Not running anymore? Yang Kai had been waiting for this moment for a long time and sneered. A cluster of black light flew out from his body and once again transformed into a series of sharp attacks that shot towards the two immortal ascension boundary masters. The masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were unable to escape. With attacks coming from all directions, they hurriedly pushed their Yuan Qi and each took out an artifact to protect themselves, but in the next moment they were wrapped in darkness. A series of rumbling sounds came from the darkness. Everyone's eyes stared nervously towards the direction of the darkness, not knowing what the fate of the two immortal ascension boundary masters would be. Qua. The darkness suddenly collapsed and two figures fell from midair, one after the other. Both of them looked distressed and were on the verge of collapse, seemingly having suffered heavy injuries. Not only that, but at this moment, both of their eyes were red and flashed with all kinds of evil light, their bodies wrapped in a faint black qi. This black light was the purest form of demonic qi, which contained the power condensed by Yang Kai, killing any ordinary person who came into contact with it. Yang Kai could ignore this demonic qi, but others could not. At this moment, the two immortal ascension boundary masters had been affected by the demonic qi, leading to the dark side of their hearts. If they could not resolve this demonic qi in time, sooner or later they would become the demon race and lose their minds. But how could it be so simple to get rid of this demonic qi? Even a master like Ling Tai Su was affected by this demonic qi and was unable to resolve it, let alone these two from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. To some extent, the demonic qi possessed by Yang Kai was even purer than the demon lords. "You're ruthless." The master from Thunderlight Sect glared at Yang Kai with resentment and muttered curses. "I told you, the price of offending me is not something you can afford." Yang Kai coldly snorted, his expression cold. Chapter 358. This was Yang Kai's first battle after becoming the demon race. Although he had long known that in this state he was much stronger than in his normal state, the final result still surprised Yang Kai. Without using the power of the unyielding golden skeleton with his current strength, at best he could fight an immortal ascension boundary second stage master to a draw. Now, however, he was completely suppressing them without even using his full strength. This kind of feeling of power was very pleasurable, but even though Yang Kai was enjoying it, he didn't lose himself. Xio. From the ground, a series of attacks drilled through the earth like earthworms towards the masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. The two masters were frightened, their faces pale, and without even thinking about it, they hurriedly tried to escape. Yang Kai sneered, his mind moving at will, controlling the dark demonic qi around him and sending it into the sky, causing the two masters to become more and more distressed. Having learned their lesson, the two masters no longer dared to run away recklessly, stopping from time to time to jointly resist these attacks so as not to provoke Yang Kai into killing these young disciples who had no power to resist. However, these attacks were simply too numerous, and the two masters had been affected by the demonic qi before, so at this moment they couldn't exert their full strength, so in a moment of carelessness, they were both wrapped up by these serpent-like black qi. At the same time, a rich black demonic qi suddenly burst out from Yang Kai's body. A loud dragon roar resounded throughout the world. Everyone turned their heads towards the source of this sound and was immediately dumbstruck. What they saw was a huge dragon head appear above Yang Kai's head, one that was almost tangible. The two dragon horns on this head were extremely sharp, exuding a dark and cold light as its large eyes stared ruthlessly towards the two immortal ascension boundary masters in the sky. Being stared at by this pair of eyes, the masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court immediately smelled the aura of death. The dragon head swayed back and forth, drawing out a large amount of demonic chi from Yang Kai's body, condensing it into a body that flew up into the sky. This was a black flood dragon. Full of evil and violence, its 200 or 300 meter long body gave off an inexplicable pressure. The flood dragon was the dragon-shaped tattoo on Yang Kai's back. It was formed by absorbing demonic energy. Yang Kai had a dragon tattoo, while Su Yen had an ice phoenix tattoo. This was supposed to be the tattoo of the art of yin-yang union of joy, but for some reason, it was able to manifest itself. Yang Kai only felt that his back was a little itchy, so he tried it casually. He didn't expect to succeed. Wherever the flood dragon passed, the snake-like black demon chi followed closely behind, setting it off in the middle like a myriad of stars surrounding the moon. The experts of Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were tied up in the air and were currently struggling to break free. Before they could escape, the huge dragon's mouth had already opened, and a mouthful of fangs could be faintly seen. With a crunch, the immortal ascension boundary cultivator from Thunderlight Sect was instantly bitten in half. Blood spurted out. The flood dragon calmly soared to a height of more than 300 meters. It then turned around and swooped down. Its 2 eyes were fixed on the experts of Soaring Rainbow Court. Seeing one of their companions die in front of them, and being bitten in half in a single bite at that, the immortal ascension boundary master from Soaring Rainbow Court was so scared that his soul almost left his body. Under the huge pressure, he almost didn't have the strength to move a finger. Suddenly, this man seemed to have found his saviors and shouted in a certain direction, "Old Man Fong, Old Man Su." Yang Kai's expression became cold as he turned his head and saw 2 streaks of light rapidly approaching. They were Xianxia's 2 guardians. Both of them were immortal ascension boundary 7-stage masters, far stronger than the masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. As they flew forward, they immediately launched attacks towards the flood dragon, causing Old Man Fong to angrily shout, "Who are you? How dare you hurt us?" Yang Kai coldly snorted and flew in front of the Soaring Rainbow Court master, waving his hand and summoning the Azura sword. King. Countless sword cries rang out, accompanied by a wave of the Shura sword, and an earth-shattering amount of sword chi flew towards Fong Lao and Su Lao to welcome their attacks. Kong. A series of violent shockwaves burst out mid-air and Yang Kai was pushed back a few steps, but he managed to block the other party's attack. The flood dragon swooped down from the sky, and when Old Man Fong and Old Man Su were less than 500 meters away, it bit down on the head of the Soaring Rainbow Court master. Kacha. The expert from Soaring Rainbow Court immediately turned into a headless corpse. Blood spurted out from his neck like a fountain, a spectacular sight. Fong Lao and Su Lao could only watch all of this happen helplessly, but they were powerless to help. Suddenly, their eyes went bloodshot as they attacked without mercy. One of them transformed into a cloud of smoke while the other emitted a golden light, using all kinds of martial skills to attack Yang Kai. Yang Kai's expression became cold, no longer as calm as before. These 2 were both immortal ascension boundary 7-stage masters, not something the 2 pieces of trash from before could compare to. Not bothering to hide his attacks, thousands of blood-red petals suddenly flew out, accompanied by a refreshing floral fragrance, each of these sharp petals transforming into a sharp attack. Sword waves raged as sword chi flew out. The white tiger and divine ox seals struck out one after another. The 3 of them had only fought for 10 breaths of time, but Yang Kai was already in a difficult situation. Even if he used 2 heaven-grade artifacts, he was unable to compete with them. Just as he was considering whether or not to retreat, 2 beautiful figures had already rushed over anxiously. Hu Jiao Air and Hu Mei Air. Both of their beautiful eyes were filled with anxiety, but after seeing that Yang Kai was unscathed, they couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. But when they saw Old Man Fong and Old Man Su attacking Yang Kai, their faces filled with anger. Without any hesitation, the 2 of them joined forces and attacked one of them. The twin Qi shared spirit divine art shone brilliantly at this moment. Both of them were only Yuan Qi 4th stage cultivators, but after pushing their secret art to its limit, their Yuan Qi was incomparably vigorous, not much worse than a peak Yuan Qi cultivator. Their dual swords were enough to compete with an ordinary immortal ascension boundary master. If Old Man Fong and Old Man Su didn't care about the consequences, they could have easily taken them down, but these two were women that Xianxia liked, so they didn't dare act too presumptuously. For a moment, their hands and feet were tied, and their moves were sluggish, not daring to use too much strength. On the other hand, Yang Kai, with the help of the Hu sisters and the Flood Dragon, was more than enough to protect himself. Two young ladies. Old Man Fong's expression became serious as he shouted, "This man is a demon." Hu Jiao Air shouted, "I don't know what a demon is, I only know that he is my friend." Two young ladies, quickly retreat, don't misunderstand others and end up harming yourself. Old Man Su also tried to persuade them. If you want to kill him, you'll have to kill us as well. Hu Mei Air seemed to be more delicate than her elder sister, but at this moment, her voice was resolute and decisive. He has killed so many people from Soaring Rainbow Court and Thunderlight Sect, so he has fallen into the demonic path. He is no longer the person you know. Now, he has no consciousness, so he doesn't recognize you at all. Quickly get away from him, Old Man Fong said anxiously. Yang Kai grinned at him, and with a loud dragon roar, the black flood dragon viciously bit towards him. You overestimate yourself. Fong Lao roared angrily. The profound light in his hand turned and hit the flood dragon's head. The giant flood dragon was knocked back, but it didn't hurt him at all. However, Old Man Fong was also forced back a step as he stared in horror at the 200 to 300 meter long flood dragon, his heart filled with a bitter taste. Everyone stop! An angry shout came from afar. Hearing this shout, Old Man Fong and Old Man Su hesitated for a moment before glaring hatefully at Yang Kai before hurriedly jumping out of the battle. Hu Jiao Air and Hu Mei Air also hurried over to Yang Kai's side and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Yang Kai slowly shook his head as he continued to stare forward. After killing so many people from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court, his purpose had been achieved. Now that Yang Kai was protected by the Flood Dragon, even Old Man Fong and Old Man Su couldn't stop him. The current Yang Kai was truly fearless. As far as the eye could see, Xianxia walked over with a heavy expression on his face. Even in such a situation, he still displayed the self-restraint and calmness that a young master from a great family should have. Looking at the blood and broken corpses on the ground, Xianxia's eyes showed a clear trace of pain. Asterisk schwa schwa schwa. Asterisk a large group of people appeared behind Xianxia. The people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall all looked around in amazement and quickly rushed over to Yang Kai's side. Guan Qi Li's pair of old eyes narrowed as his heart trembled. When he saw the two corpses from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court, his eyes couldn't help trembling. In the field, the two sides were clearly divided. Except for the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall who stood on Yang Kai's side, everyone else stood on Xianxia's side. Old Man Fong and Old Man Su also wore their Yuan Qi, vigilantly guarding against Yang Kai. Xianxia glanced at Yang Kai faintly and felt the murderous aura coming from his body. He couldn't help raising his brow, a look of surprise appearing on his face. Seeing the black flood dragon floating midair, his expression couldn't help but change. He could feel the powerful combat strength of this flood dragon, so naturally he had some greedy and possessive thoughts. However, this flood dragon was obviously formed from pure Yuan Qi, so Xianxia had no choice but to dispel these thoughts. Looking around, Xianxia's face filled with grief as he asked, "What happened?" Old Man Fong quickly explained, "Young master, when Old Man Su and I rushed back, we saw this little brat become the demon race and kill Soaring Rainbow Court's Qingming. These two old masters were incompetent and were unable to save Qingming from his grasp. Qingming is dead." Xianxia showed a trace of genuine surprise. Old Man Fong nodded, pointing to a nearby corpse. "His head has been severed." "What about the immortal ascension boundary master from Thunderlight Sect?" Xianxia asked anxiously. Before we arrived, he was already dead. Xianxia couldn't help feeling shocked. He had overestimated Yang Kai's combat strength as much as possible, but he had never imagined that his overestimation of Yang Kai's strength would prove to be far too low. 2 immortal ascension boundary second stage masters had actually been killed by him. Just how strong was he? Young master, that young man has become the demon race and doesn't even recognize his own family. Young master, please allow these 2 old masters to kill him and avenge Qing Ming. Old man Fang grit his teeth and said. Xianxia's brow furrowed, seemingly hesitating. Hu Jiao Air quickly interjected, old man, who said he became the demon race. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.